Hello, Millennium listeners. It's good to be back here for another episode of Millennium Live. I'm very excited to be chatting with some amazing solution providers as of late, and we have another great one right here with us, too. If you want to leverage a new level of data and start delivering breakthrough customer experiences, you're going to want to listen to this episode. And to talk about Chatmeter, we have Cynthia Sener. She is the CRO at Chatmeter. I want to welcome Cynthia to the podcast. Cynthia, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks.
Great. Well, it's great to have you here. And I want to talk today a lot about what is driving customer experiences. And before we get into that, can you share a little bit about your background and, just for our listeners, introduce yourself and maybe just give us a little rundown about Chatmeter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I'm Cynthia Sener, Chief Revenue Officer at Chatmeter. And, my background is in product marketing and sales, all tied to SaaS businesses. And really what Chatmeter does is we listen to the market to hear what your customers are saying at each and every location that you can then pull up at scale. So businesses that are dealing with consumers that want to know what's happening in each and every store, they can do that and get a good understanding of what that experience is, from listings to reputation to social media engagement, all of that, to understand the sentiment and how customers are feeling right now with their experience in store.
That's awesome. We want to talk a lot. We have a different group of topics I want to get into today, and I want to start with sort of at the macro level and some of the trends that are happening there. And we all know macroeconomic conditions are a little rough right now, and consumers are, they're wondering if they're going to face a potential recession, and among other economic concerns. And of course, that's affecting the business side of things as well. So, what are your clients telling you in terms of the impacts that they're seeing in the brand loyalty space? What are you seeing overall? And are you able to derive insights from the Chatmeter platform to help with this?
Yes, we're definitely seeing this inside of Chatmeter, our business, as well as Chatmeter, the platform. I mean, simply, let's put it this way. Simply put, brands are nervous, right? They see
Yeah.
disruption ahead. They're seeing financial indicators. They're reading the news like all of us are reading the news, right? That every consumer has to apply that to their role in the brand. And they want to protect their business, and there's studies sort of suggesting that brand loyalty is shaky at the moment, and so as people are looking for maybe a more economical option, are they looking for changes or making buying choices? So it's funny, like at that time, there's one or two things. You could panic or you could lean in, right? And it's the time for businesses to really swoop in and grab that market share that's possibly at risk as well, right? Because people maybe are thinking about changing or they are evaluating their spend. So, or at worst case, bare minimum, protect your existing customers and make sure that you're not stepping backwards in that market share. So we're working with customers on their sentiment analysis. How do they leverage this to understand what is going well and where could they possibly have threats to their business? If something's going well, how do they double down on that, right? How do they make sure if things are happening in certain regions or certain markets that they actually share that to every other market? And we're seeing that inside the feedback from reviews from consumers saying, this was amazing, this worked well. And you can see these little spikes and pockets of businesses that are doing well inside a brand. So, the best brands are listening, and then they're trying to engage in that and pushing that out to their market.
I agree with you. I think that's a very important point that they're listening to their customers, and I think it's time, for businesses to churn and do things that show their customers some love. And
Yeah.
we're all trying to do this, and while consumers and businesses both, as you mentioned, they're grappling with potential recession, especially inflation and prices that are with goods. What specific recommendations would you have, Cynthia, in terms of what brands can do to show their own loyalty to their customers and deepening the consumer loyalty that ultimately drives revenue?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, listen to your customers and react, right? It's that simple. Customers want brands they can engage with and get reactions and be heard. If something doesn't meet their expectations, they want to hear from the brand and hear a response. If they're price sensitive, maybe get creative on some affordable options without sacrificing some of your more valuable items. Make it easier to do business with you. and find areas you can add new value to retain those customers. I always find it interesting when brands will only do incentives for new customers. It's almost like saying, yeah, thanks, existing customers. We don't need you. We're going to focus on that. So, think of ways that you can incentivize and reward those customers and lean in ways that are maybe affordable solutions that still give a nice hug to the customer. And I just find it fascinating because as we look at all of this feedback that customers are giving, they're telling these brands how to get their business, how to earn their business, what they want, especially on sites like Google and Yelp, right? And so the keys for the business to listen and react to that.
I want to get into some examples of these and really the importance about to embrace the voice of the customer. This isn't a new idea at all. And yet, as you mentioned, some of these initiatives are going to new customers, and where's the brand loyalty in that? And by talking about this listening, I want to go further. And so what do you mean in Chatmeter? Where does deep listening come from? And what are some examples of brands who have successfully listened to their customers? And what have you seen out there? What is deep listening and how can brands do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, first, deep listening means you're mining the data, right? For insights that not be at the surface of your primary data collection. So, and the most obvious example of that would be surveys that companies send to their customers. Surveys are great, but they only capture answers to the questions you know to ask. And not all segments of the market is going to answer a survey. And so some people have survey fatigue, some people, don't know how to answer this, or you only get that segment of the market that's hoping for that $500 receipt incentive or other things, right? So you've got to monitor the content that is out there beyond those surveys to really listen to the frustrations and the elation of your brand. So, I have seen examples where someone's seeing upticks in certain words or certain phrases around their product or issues about their delivery and how they're engaging. And so then taking those moments, maybe you respond with another survey, but now you've gone deep, right? So it's like, this is the surface where you're asking questions, but then as you're starting to see something spike, how do you go in and really understand what's happening there? Add other content, and by talking to the market, hearing what's happening, and most importantly too is listening to your employees in those locations. Sentiment that employees are saying about the location of their brand will also give indications where there's positive and negatives. Employees are very willing to post anonymous feedback to certain sites like Glassdoor and Indeed. And are you listening to that along with this other information so that you know that you're offering the right experience? I always find it fascinating that if you see dissatisfaction, that's where you're probably going to see customer dissatisfaction follow. So are you responding to that, listening to employees' feedback and then engaging properly? That's the deep listening. That's beyond an NPS story, survey that says, that one great question. That great question's great, but then once you're doing it, how are you diving in to the insights that you're seeing that can really give you better functionality inside the business?
I think we're onto something there, Cynthia. Let's talk about the role of modern technology in this. And we're talking about the importance of deep listening and activating on those moments. Now let's talk about the tech angle side of things, of the same topic here. What are the benefits of the AI-powered deep listening in driving that CX agility to increase customer loyalty and growth for multi-location enterprises all around us?
Yeah, I mean, the benefits of AI is that it's going to give you the models to understand and learn from that content, right? So it gives you that agility to say, this is good, this is bad. Businesses that are leveraging a location-based CX platform, can now take that deeper into the organization and provide those tools to the field. They can provide those tools at a regional level, and everyone can still have that centralized view of the customer. So that visibility at every part of the business gives that customer-centered mindset for how to grow inside of their market. And quite frankly, it's not just for themselves, it's also for their competitors. So having that customer-centric view for a specific location or for a region and then say, and how are our competitors doing in the same area, will tell you where their strengths and weaknesses are as well. So you shouldn't just be deep listening to yourself. You should be deep listening to the brands you either are stealing business from or aspiring to be like, right? And tapping into that. Ultimately, that's how you would grow the market.
AI, ML, NLP, all those acronyms. They're all out there, and they make this sound super easy, and we all know it's not. So, in reality, customer feedback is often unstructured, as you mentioned. So, while it's, I guess, relatively easy to extract insights from structured data, it's much more difficult to do so with the unstructured data. So, how does Chatmeter approach this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Don't you love all the acronyms that we use these
Love
days, right? Every time
We'll
there's a
have
new one, I have to catch up on that and figure, wait, what does that one stand for? I thought it stood for this. But I mean, you know, artificial intelligence and natural language processing and the ways that we're taking data is the only way you can be successful in the unstructured data. And let's be honest, for every survey someone posts, there's 10 pieces of feedback out there that are unstructured. So how do you tap into that and how do you listen? So at scale, it can be overwhelming. The many different sites where people can post things, from, like I mentioned, Google and Yelp before, but you also have, all the social sites, right? Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok, and just it keeps going. So how do you make that work? The only way to do that is through machine learning that can adapt. Chatmeter's been developing a proprietary sentiment tool with dictionaries across core industries for, we've been in business for over 12 years. So, and we listen to millions of surveys and sentiment and reviews every year that create these structures based on that feedback, because it does come down to the details. And, the best example I can give you is, like, words mean different things based upon context, right? So take the word cold. Cold beer is great. A cold steak, not so great, right? You want help getting, support for a cold at urgent care, but if your urgent care waiting room is cold, or you get a cold response from a nurse, like, each of those things have context and mean different things in different deliveries. And so AI helps build sentiment that is diverse based upon the application and the combination of those words together, the industry they're tied to, what would that be related to, look at the sentence structure and understand a little bit for sarcasm, right? And all of that goes into really understanding how do you take action on that? Because without a tool that can synthesize that and give you simple action points, it's just a lot of data. So it has to be something that businesses can leverage technology to do that. Otherwise, listening is virtually impossible. If you're thinking, oh, I'm going to read all these reviews and just take something out of it, how on earth would you do that if you don't have a tool that is learning ahead of you at the speed of bots, and that can really go in and take that intelligence to something that you can leverage later?
That's really fascinating when you really think about it, and once we have the acronyms for the whole alphabet, then maybe we'll have the answer. So this has been so fun, Cynthia. I want to ask you at least one more question, and it's always about the future here at Millennium Live. I can't let any guests go without just talking where things are going, and that's probably the most exciting part. So, we've talked a lot about what really drives brand loyalty and the overall consumer experience that businesses are going to have to really face as retail changes constantly, especially now at moving into the mid 2020s, dare I say. So, if there is one thing there's one singular thing, Cynthia, that you want the Millennium Live listeners, our audience, our data people to take away. What is it? And why should they think differently, as they return to their office, and whether that be in real life or in their basement. So where do we see this going?
So words of wisdom, let's see. I mean, it does come down to the data, but it comes down to the democratization of the data, right? Share it, right? There, you have to have a great way to listen to all the customer feedback, and then you should push that out systematically throughout the organization, right? A way that everyone in every part understands the priority, the customers, that feedback, and their role. So, as part of this, like, be sure you have a tool that you can listen to and work with to spread that out through the organization, and then look at priorities on how you incentivize your teams, how you're rewarding behavior and how you're putting the customer first. Listening to your customers across the organization so that the center is what I would say is kind of that secret sauce that not enough brands do. They focus on all the other metrics, but they forget about customers first. So look at that, evaluate if you have a tool. If you don't, call Chatmeter because they'll definitely do a brand audit for you and evaluate how things are working with your customers, yes or no. But regardless, have a system inside your organization that shares this from the C-suite down to the ground.
That's awesome. And I have so enjoyed talking to Cynthia and learning about shaping the world's experiences by providing brands with local insights and solutions. Cynthia Sener, thank you very much for joining Millennium Live and for telling us all about Chatmeter and having a great customer experience discussion with me today.
Thanks for having me.